Well, good afternoon. As the Chief Executive Officer of Global Ties Alabama, I welcome each of you today to our Global Perspectives Institute. We recognize the global challenges of the pandemic, economic competition, climate change, humanitarianism, and gender equity and equality. I consider today's forum quite special as we begin to see many steps of progress after 1 year of the global pandemic and a complicated election. COVID-19 vaccines, new leadership, and partnerships in our nation translates to hope. I recall relocating to Alabama in 2004, and when I spoke of Women's History Month, people looked at me like, there she goes again, that woman from the North. What is she talking about? So Global Ties Alabama really takes pride in joining the 2021 Women's History Month platforms. Valiant Women of the Vote, Refusing to be Silenced, and yesterday's International Women's Day celebrations choose to challenge and women in leadership achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 year. That's acknowledging the progress. Finally, 2020 marked the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing and protecting women's constitutional rights to vote. The 2020 Women's Suffrage Centennial lasts until August 26, 2021. And International Women's Day and the Suffrage Centennial was celebrated in Huntsville, Alabama yesterday morning at the mural of artist Kim Radford. That was the opening video that you saw. Yet declaring that there are so many opportunities for improvement in spite of the progress. Women make up 51% of our population, yet represent 2/3 of all minimum wage earners.
Wow.
24% of US Senate and 27.1% in the House of Representatives. Lost jobs at a greater rate during this pandemic. And most devastating is Wallet Hub's 2021 rating of Alabama as number 50 on the list of best and worst for women. There were 26 key indicators, including median earnings, women's preventive health care, and women's homicide rates, among the other indicators. Today, I have the pleasure and really the honor of introducing a panel of valiant women who I believe are change makers and who refuse to be silenced. I remember when the term change agent came on, and I kept hearing that. And I said, wait a minute, we're not change agents, we're change makers. I'll share their bios, and each one has been asked to share their perspective on being a valiant woman and how they refuse to be silent. So let's start with Council Member Ackridge. She's a member of the Huntsville City Council and was elected for her first term in 2018. I know that she is a global citizen, having lived around the world. She's a member of very distinguished women's organizations here in the Tennessee Valley area. She's an avid fundraiser, community columnist for the Huntsville Times. And she received her bachelor's degree in special education from Virginia Commonwealth in Richmond, Virginia. After a career in education in Westmoreland County, Frances entered the private sector in commercial real estate, including work as a land planner in a civil engineering firm. That's different for a woman. And she has been assigned in those roles. One of her assignments was to ERC here in Huntsville and in the DC area, and assigned to NASA as a technical coordinator for the Aries program. Our next speaker, our panelist, will be Mary Scott Hunter. And I know of her as a global citizen. She first served in the active duty in the Air Force, then in the reserves, traveled around the world and spent 10 years as a U.S. Air Force Judge Advocate General. And that was after she graduated from law school in 1998.
Wow.
She and her husband moved back to Huntsville, Alabama in 2006. They relocated from Germany. She joined Intuitive Research and Technology Corporation in 2012. I met her as an elected official. She was a member of our state education board from 2010, reelected in 2014, and has served as a trustee for the Alabama Community College System and Athens State University.
Wow.
She has always been accessible. I don't care when you reach out to her, you will receive a response. And now, even though she's not in an elected role, she still has a very strong voice. And many of you have heard of her podcast, Bell Curve. Our next presenter will be Violet Edwards. And I'm so proud to be able to call her Commissioner Violet Edwards. I didn't know until we met with her personally a couple of weeks ago that she too is a global citizen, having studied abroad and recruited study abroad students for the Department of State. She obviously made history, though, in November of 2020 as the first Black woman elected to the Madison County Commission, shattering the glass ceiling that had stood for 212 years. Now, I have to tell you, when we read her bio and we said 212 years, that was the first time a Black woman was elected to the commission. She hails from Cordova, Alabama, holds a communications degree from the University of Alabama and an MBA from the University of Alabama in Huntsville. And she is an avid advocate for the homeless, programs that empower women and youth. She's a former journalist. I don't know really how you become a former journalist, but she says she's a former journalist, businesswoman, and nonprofit director. And right now she's focused on providing COVID relief for her constituents, and recently secured a $5.2 million funding for emergency rental and utility assistance. Our last panelist is Emily Peck. And for the past 10 years, she's been a lecturer at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, teaching American and state and local government. Teaching, though, is her second career. She spent 17 years in the news business, 14 of those working as a producer reporter for the former APT program For the Record. The program covered various topics involving Alabama politics. And while in Montgomery, she earned her master's in political science and public administration. In addition, she met her husband, and that's when I said, I know Emily Peck because I know John Peck. And it wasn't until I read her bio that they met when he was working at the Huntsville Times State Capitol as a reporter. They moved to Huntsville in 2003. She began teaching at UAH at that time. We're very excited about the caliber of women that we have today, all valiant women, women who have combined many careers during their lifetime and continue to be committed to women in a very special way. We will have a Q&A with our audience, and we want to now ask our visitors, our panelists, some questions. If I'd like each one of you to share why you believe that you are a valiant woman and what challenges you the most today as a leader. So let's start, Mary Scott.
Mary, you're up.
You want to unmute?
Myself. Am I sideways to y'all or?
You're good.
Unmute. So
Yep.
am I sideways to y'all or are y'all looking at me correctly?
Give
me a thumbs up if I'm oriented properly. All right, I see Violet giving me a thumbs up. Thanks, Violet. Yep. So thank you for this opportunity, and I think that valiant women can't remain silent, and yet speaking up and making your voice heard is messy, and it's hard, and it's not tidy, and it's not neat. And when you do it, there are all kinds of feelings and there are all kinds of emotions that go along with it. Internally, there's all kinds of stuff that happens externally when you kind of insert yourself. But, you know, we have things to offer. We have our ideas. We have our spirit. We have our love. We have our passion. And I just think it's extremely important that never, ever, ever be bottled up. Never. And so, you know, for good, bad, or ugly, you got to get out there, and sometimes you got to say things that you really think need to be said, and people are going to disagree with you. Sometimes people really close to home are going to disagree with you, and it's not going to feel good, but it needs to happen. And just expect that little bit of messiness or a lot of messiness to happen, and it's okay. It's okay.
Well, thank you, Mary Scott. I'd like to ask Commissioner Violet Edwards if she would share her perspective on being a valiant woman and how you have refused to be silent.
I think that all the members of this panel have the distinction of being disruptors. Just our presence in the space that we walk in daily. Most of us are in several situations, we're the only female, or we're in positions that are a bit male dominant. So just our presence caused some disruption because we have walked in shoes that many of our counterparts haven't. And we bring that different perspective. And we can't be afraid to tap into those unique experiences that we bring to the table. So I can't be afraid to tap into my experience as a mother of 3, even if the people that I'm dealing with don't understand what I'm talking about. My view, my opinion is still important. Even though, you know, my counterparts may not have experience staying at home or experience being the first or experience being the only, I can't make my experience, I can't shrink in it. I have to just walk into it, say what I mean what I say, and just make sure that we approach everything in the spirit of love and being open-minded and just leaving all fear aside. And so in not being silenced, I think that that's why we're in our space, that there was a seed planted in each one of us, and that we had to cancel out the noise, and we just had to boldly move forward and walk into our gift. And I think that's what being a valiant woman means.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Council Member Ackridge, what do you think of yourself as when you hear valiant woman? What traits do you have or experiences that allow you to share that perspective as being a valiant woman?
Well, thank you for considering me to be valiant. I didn't think of myself that way when I decided to run for city council. I simply felt like it was my duty to represent my neighbors and to look to look over the entire city's growth as how it affects our neighbors and neighborhoods while we're also making economic investments. So I guess that being valiant for me means show up. And when you show up, you have already made a commitment. Being valiant also requires, for me, learning about communication to the depth of understanding how men and women use language differently. A book that I highly recommend, and this is the encouragement part, is a book by Deborah Tannen, who is a linguist in Georgetown University. She might have retired by now, but she studies the way that people use language, even between cultures, such as military culture. And she has a book called Talking 9 to 5. It was a book following up to a book called Please Understand Me, which was more gender related. And understanding that language is something that is for men, it starts with values. Men tend to value status more, and women value cooperation, by and large, is her premise, and she has proven this in her research. Those two things being different values sets up a challenge on how we are understood. I've learned by showing up into a male-dominated environment. After I left teaching, I've only worked with primarily men. Understanding the value of water cooler talk, just talking about whether it's sports or it's a way of bonding. It's using sports as a metaphor when you're talking helps to bring across a message. So be valiant by A, showing up, B, learning and understanding that language is different between cultures, including gender, or even gender neutral. So that's how I assess my ability to be valiant and to continue to do so and encourage other women as well.
Thank you so much, Council Member Ackridge. I can't help but think about the first time I was promoted to a vice president role, and I was asked to shadow my predecessor for 6 months. So I'm qualified for the position, but I need to shadow him. And one day we were preparing for a corporate audit meeting, and he got in about 6 o'clock in the morning. And he said, Jackie, you've been doing a great job. He said, but I would ask that maybe you consider coming in earlier every day, because this way you can be like me. I meet with the guys in the restroom and we talk about things that happened the night before. And it's that language difference. And I told him how much I appreciated him. I had a daughter and I needed to get her off in the morning. So I wouldn't be able to meet the guys at 6:30 in the morning, but I really appreciated his support. And so it really speaks to the gender differences. And
it's a struggle because then there's an age difference. And later, if you want me to, I will elaborate on a specific instance when hanging out with the guys actually put me in a position of one of the reasons why they decided I was not suited for a job,
yes.
Even though I was a high producer in a commercial real estate company. Yeah. So it's hard, but it is not insurmountable. Thank you for that reinforcement of that experience.
Yeah. So Emily, you haven't been elected to a position, but you have been able to teach about our environment, our history, our government to young people, and you also have been a journalist. So tell us why you would consider yourself a valiant woman. What experiences have you had or witnessed?
Well, I don't consider myself necessarily a valiant woman, but I do believe that education, our voice, and our vote are really important. And one of the things that I hope I bring to the table with my students is I want them to make an educated decision at the ballot box. And I really think that we take our right to vote for granted so much, because there were women that struggled for over 100 years to earn this right to vote. They were jailed. They were denied access to a lot of things. And I think it's important that we respect that effort that they put in to earn that right. And we vote because we can make a difference. And voting, it's very popular when there's a national election, obviously, but where the rubber hits the road is on state and local elections. And those are where voting turnout numbers drop. And these are the persons that they pick up our garbage, they police our streets, they enact zoning laws. And so we need to know and understand those issues, and we need to know who our elected politicians are, or lawmakers are, and be educated about that process, because these are the guys that directly impact us as citizens. And I just think that it's important to understand the issues, to understand the dynamics of how the process works, and to be able to make an educated decision when you go to cast your ballot.
Now,
So,
Miss
so
Emily,
oh,
Yes.
please. Yes.
I just looked up the definition for valiant, and it says possessing or showing courage and determination. If that is not you, you are a journalist. That is courage and determination. You teach high schooler. I mean, you teach at a university, standing in front of teenagers. That is some courage and determination. While you might not see yourself that way, let me just straighten your crown. Yes, baby, you are.
Well,
I applaud you for what you were doing.
when I covered the Alabama legislature for those 14 years that I worked with Alabama Public Television, I would see the process of how laws were made. And there were a lot of citizens that would say, why didn't we know this? Why didn't we know this? They didn't understand the process. They weren't reading newspapers. They weren't educating themselves. And I really think that that's even more so important in today's world of social media and bloggers. We have to be more discerning of what is fact and what is fiction, and take that in making those educated decisions. And so when I left there, I thought, my reporting days, I thought people need to be more educated so that they know what's going on, so that their voice will matter when they cast that vote. So.
Emily, can you share an example of maybe a student walking in your class in August and the difference that you see in them in December or June after you have helped to facilitate their education about the importance of the ballot?
Well, I can talk a little bit about how the dynamics of things work. For example, the system of checks and balances. Most of the students that come in, they think that the president proposes a law, it goes through Congress, and then the courts review the law. And that's not how it works. The courts only review a law when it has been challenged, and that each branch can check the other. There are many times that students will come in and they'll say, well, the president can do this, or the president's going to do that. Big thing is during an election year, you will hear the president say, or a candidate say, I can do this, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. Well, only a member of Congress can propose a bill. But a candidate can make a lot of promises about what they're going to do, but they can't introduce a bill. Only a member of Congress can. So they're going to have to get someone on their side to introduce that bill for them. And I think people don't really understand that process. And when they learn that, I hear a lot of students go, I was thinking about it, and the president's not going to be able to do everything he says he's going to do. And I go, yeah.
And Emily, if you would encourage people to learn about that on a local basis, it's a microcosm to understand getting to know your city council person, helping that city council person lobby for a change, and understanding even deeper, follow the money. We have a partisan election in Huntsville, and people want to make it partisan, but it is something, no, not but, and it is something that I've, having a heart of a teacher, I want to try to educate so that that turnout that you referred to increases. Whether or not people want me to continue being their city council person in 22, if I can make it so that people will go from, I think it was 12% turnout of registered voters to 15, I would rather not do it by making them mad at me, but if that's what it takes to, then we need to increase, because we think about that. Registered voters, where your money goes, and you can literally make a difference by understanding what a city council person does and those challenges that they have. There's a lot of philosophical topics that do need to be addressed so that you can understand role of government. And there's some paradigm shifts that probably have to be made as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But you said turnout, I'm like, yay, we need to increase turnout. And I'm sure Ms. Hunter can understand. Valiant, I don't know how much the turnout was for your percentage of voters, but most people, I guess, just feel like, well, as long as I'm not getting, as long as I feel safe in my city, I'm cool. Y'all do what you want to do. But there's investments we can make to.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the questions I saw in the list that you posed, Jackie, is a challenge for a leader. I would say that a challenge for a political leader is definitely the lack of understanding of elections.
Yes.
And the importance of going to them, primary elections, local elections, municipal elections. You know, that's definitely a huge challenge, because it's just, for whatever reason, as much as we try to help people understand that, it seems to get missed. So
yes, that's an issue. A lot of my students coming in not knowing the purpose of the primary.
yes,
They think the primary is the general election, and that's another area that I see quite frequently.
that's a huge challenge for any political leader. If I was answering, and I don't want to jump ahead of you, Jackie, but
No, please.
I've been thinking about your question about challenge, you know, being challenged as a leader today. And I'd like to kind of zoom out a little bit from politics, although we are talking politics today, but we're kind of in the mode of talking about the vote and women in this country. And I really tried to give thought to this question about what challenges us as women leaders. And I do want to say to the group today that I think someday I'm going to write a book, an ode to the cobbled together career. And if you look at our panelists here today, probably many of you out there, women often have to be hugely flexible in their career options. Jackie, the situation that you talked about, where you were invited into this meeting at 6:30 in the morning, but I didn't work for your family. So as women, something that is challenging for us, and I'm not sure necessarily how to solve it. Maybe some of the other panelists have some insights here, but we do often go through phases where we kind of cobble things together for our families, for others, aging parents, for whatever reason. And I think sometimes that can be viewed by, corporate America is still heavily male dominated. I think that can be viewed as indecisive, or like kind of not knowing what you want to be when you grow up. But the truth is, these plan Bs and these concessions, whatever you want to call them, we make, are planned. They're calculated, and sometimes they're extremely well constructed. Oftentimes they're extremely well for a woman to keep her career going. So I just zooming out on that point in particular, a challenge as a leader today is, as a woman leader, the challenge of the kind of cobbled together career and how that's maybe viewed not positively by the ones that we need it to be viewed more positively. If that makes any sense. And maybe some of you have some insights on that. I've struggled with how to solve that problem. That's a challenge that I don't have a solution for just yet.
It's a challenge, but I don't think we ought to shy away from the conversation. And when we have those type of difficulties, to just address it like Ms. Jackie did and move forward. I will remember, I will never forget, excuse me, running a nonprofit that bought thousands of dollars worth of Christmas gifts for children every year. And then I get home and my kids wouldn't even have a Christmas tree. Just focusing on career and the things that I left out at home, just trying to make this career thing work. But what I also found is with each of my career moves, I thought about family, and then I thought about there's just never a perfect time to run for office. There was never a perfect time to I mean, there's just so much in our life that just never that perfect time to do it. And so as we step out and we maneuver in this space that is so different for us, just because we are there, we're the only often at the table, that when those conversations like Ms. Jackie had, that we are just straight up and that we're honest. And, you know, did he not think about it, that you can't even go into the bathroom and hold these discussions with these men, you know, Ms. Jackie. So, you know, and not belittling him, but just, you know, again, he's never walked in your shoes. And I am now totally comfortable with saying, hey, I can't do this and this is why, and not hide, not make up an excuse, but it's because, you know, I am woman, I am mother, this is my life.
I do think COVID has presented some challenges, particularly for women this year, because while we're trying to maintain our jobs and our positions, we have kids at home who are having to do school learning. And whereas before they would go to school and we would go to our respective offices, and then we'd come back and somehow or other we'd throw together a dinner and we'd sit around the table and talk about our day. But now everybody's in the same space. And I know that that's been probably particularly challenging.
So how have you all individually or collectively worked towards facilitating progress for women in the Tennessee Valley or wherever you have been, you know, worked in the past? What examples have you offered? I think this issue of women, working women and being a stay-at-home mom during a pandemic, I have a new prayer every morning for schools. I pray for the teachers and the faculty and the students and the parents. I just spent 6 weeks taking care of my 7 and 11-year-old grandchildren who were remote education students. And I thought I was going to lose my mind because how, especially for the 11-year-old, you know, you think he's responsible and he shows you he's at his desk, but what is he really doing? Since he is addicted to Fortnite and all of that other stuff. The 7-year-old isn't able to hide from you. How do you help to facilitate her education as a working mother? So how have you,
Jackie, I don't know if you can share the screen for bell curve. I don't know if you'll have the ability to do that. I think Kezia was going to look at that, but as I'm talking, Kezia, you might see if you can pull that up and share the screen. But something that's been important to me and my partners with bell curve is to help women. We set out with the goal of helping women be their best selves and the best version of themselves. And we have a wonderful sponsor and a company called Higher Echelon, and they're a company that, I mean, you pay for their services to get coaching and to get career advice and to get development coaching and all these sorts of things. But they really wanted to bring these ideas to women more broadly. And you can see that first one right there. If you scroll on up, Kezia, a bit, the topic for that one is imposter syndrome. So scroll up to the title of that one. Yeah, Kicking Imposter Syndrome. Who has the Imposter Syndrome Files podcast, a really well-known podcast, and she was fascinating. And imposter syndrome is something many professional women face. In fact, I would say many are plagued by it. If you kind of keep going, let's see, go back to the homepage, Kezia. If we kind of clicked on these and went on down, you would just see a lot of topics that you can kind of scroll up, Kezia, and see some of the topics that are underneath there. Oh, I don't know why that came up. Sorry. We don't want you to do a membership level. Anyway, we've covered all sorts of, it looks like you're in the podcast instead of on the main page where you can see all the topics, but you can come out of that. That's maybe a good place to stop. But we chose topics, and we choose topics twice a month that are particularly useful for career-oriented women. Now, some of our listeners are not in the workplace now because they're taking a break to take care of family, maybe aging parents, or, oh, there you go. That was fun one. That was about love languages. Down below this one, you can see this one was interesting. This one was about confidences and keeping confidences in the workplace and among loved ones. But and you can jump out, Kezia, but this kind of just gives you an example of what we decided to do with Bell Curve, because we really wanted to bring what you could get in a professional coaching session. We wanted to be able to bring that for free in the form of a podcast. And so that's been a labor of love and a wonderful creative outlet for me. And I've enjoyed it. And I really particularly enjoy when we reach women and they post somewhere, or they send us a private message, or they let us know, I really got something out of that I needed. Thank you. That's really rewarding for me.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Commissioner,
I think Francis is a listener sometimes, so I'm happy about that.
Commissioner Edwards, can you give a example of how you have facilitated making a difference for women in either your professional role or as a professional in supporting some entity that's important to you?
Yes, ma'am. So I am the chartering president of a nonprofit called Mocha Moms. It's a support group for mothers who stay at home. And you would wonder, okay, so why do they need a support group? They just stay at home. And that's why they need a support group, because we found that in it, just the decision to stay at home with our children was major. All of us had college degrees. All of us had taken out student loans, or our parents had funded our education, and we got a point in our life, and it was just like, why are you throwing it all away? And we found that we weren't throwing it all away. We were just deciding to use that education that we paid for to pour into our children. And that often leads to depression. It often leads to you second guessing yourself. You hold conversations and baby talk, and you just really wish you had an adult to use the adult side of your brain. And it really just left a lot of mothers feeling blue. And so there was a time that I found there were plenty of play dates for our kids, but there was nothing that just really focused on the mental health and the mental issues of mothers. And so Mocha Moms was a national organization. And so I was helped charter one here. And it's still a small group of about 20 women, but it's women who just needed other women to bounce ideas off of, to make sure we're not crazy. We hear things that happen and feel some kind of way and wonder if we're the only one. And so we bring it to the group and we discuss it, ways to handle it, the importance of going to PEAs, the importance of being part of our children's lives, the importance of just everything that deals with being a mom. And I think that once the pandemic hit and we were all at home, then just that connection with other women was even more important.
Great concrete
awesome.
example. Council Member Ackridge, do you have a women's advocacy process that you've been involved in?
So specifically, I became a member of the Women's Economic Development Council, and it is an amazing organization designed 25 years ago to encourage women to get into business. And it is comprised of it's for women to encourage the economic development. When I first saw it, first of all, saw how well run it was, I was blown away. And secondly, when I saw that one of the precepts of joining is to always promise to raise other women up. And the fact that there was an element of economic independence spoke to me. I have not always had a husband or extra income. So financial peace has always been something very important to me as a single woman for a very long time. So I saw that as a way to invest in people in my own community and get to know those people and eventually serve as a mentor. Not because of my expertise in business, but because of my experience of working in a male-dominated world almost all my life. And also to be able to, so that's the investment I made. Now, to speak to some of the challenges that Mary Scott talked about with, I think respect is the word I would use for a quote cobbled together career, or the understanding of the, feeling undervalued if you're a mom, even if you have a higher degree, is understanding how to talk about transferring your skills. I know a woman who has 12 children. Her executive level skills for managing that family
are impressive.
I get chills thinking about it. 12 children.
Yeah.
And all of them are kind, engaged citizens. And it's, anyway, anybody, the best job and the most important job in the world is being a mother. Whether you are a good mom without an education, you're just simply being a good mom. Ben Carson's mother didn't know how to read, and she ended up raising a child who became a neurosurgeon. And how incredible is that? So transferring your skills, understanding what those skills are, is another book that comes to mind. It's called Strengths Finders. And it is a very easy to do list of questions. It's a $25 book, and it results in an understanding of what your strengths are and where some of those careers are that could exercise those strengths. My number one strength, anyway, right now, is a maximizer. I am able to see something and bring it to the next level. I know that sounds, it's kind of a cliche, but maximize the potential of it. And I don't usually have enough patience to actually physically start something, but once somebody else starts it, I'm ready to be on their team to bring it forward to, okay, another level. So please encourage women to understand their skills, use Strengths Finders, transferring those skills when they decide to go back to the workforce or to start their own business. But the most important thing I think we could offer women is never underestimate your own, do we say agency these days? I learned when I was exploring the idea of running for government, because I had never really considered it. It typically takes women 7 times to hear you should do X to do it, whether it's start your own business, run for office, go for a promotion. Why does it take us 7 times? Most men, they see something and go, what the heck? I'm going to do it. They just step up. We need to get some of that chutzpah and just don't second guess your instincts. That's what I did. I second guessed my instincts, and never again. I won't have to hear somebody tell me 7 times to do something. I don't jump at every opportunity that's presented. People are already asked me, will you run for state government, as if it's a promotion? It is not. It is a different kind of job. And going back to Emily, if we could help people understand what is involved in a job, I think we'll all be helping educate people too, to be able to increase that number for turnout. But that's the original question was, what have I done for women? And it's become involved in a women's group, which was new to me. I've been so used to surviving and thriving in my other careers, and there's been several. And by the way, having several careers, that's the new normal. Millennials change careers frequently. And frankly, it's kind of old school to have just a corporate career ladder career. It's not, anyway, if there's anybody who's under 30 thinking, is that a problem? The answer is no. You become well-rounded.
Well, WEDC is the actual sponsor of the mural downtown, so it is
Incredible.
a wonderful organization. Emily, let's just close out with you asking you to share what you might have been able to do for a woman or women. It would be wonderful to hear your experience as well.
Well, I wanted to add, Frances reminded me of when I was a mom, there was a period of time when I was kind of between careers. I had left journalism and I was working towards teaching at the university level. And so I was really, being a full-time mom. And I had someone ask me one time, said, what do you do? And I said, I'm a research associate in the field of child development and human relations.
Wow. Perfect. Yes.
And that's what your male counterparts would do on their resume. So thank you for that.
So I think any mom is a research associate in the field of child development and human relations. So we have an important job to do. I do think that it's important for women to know there was a colorful cast of characters who came together at different times. They had different strategies. Sometimes they agreed, sometimes they disagreed, sometimes they planted seeds, and they didn't get to see the fruition of their work that went into giving us the right to vote. Susan B. Anthony worked half of her life, 50 years, to try and earn the right to vote, but she never saw that come to fruition. She passed before the 20th Amendment was passed. So I think it's important for us to know that we can make a difference, and we may not see it, but we're planting those seeds. And we can work together with a colorful cast of characters to bring about change and positive change in all that we try to do.
Thank you very much, because that gives me an opportunity to show everybody my Sojourner Truth pin. We need to tell the stories of our Shiro so that our young people, I grew up thinking she was really like my aunt. She was a mentor. She was my Shiro, and I know that she helped to inspire me. We love to ask our audience if they have a question. So we'll take 2 questions because we're a couple minutes over. But if there are any questions that any of our audience members would like to ask, this is a wonderful time to connect with our Valiant Women panel. Anyone?
Sounds like a movie. Anyone? There's a movie like
that. If not, can we ask our panelists just to offer one closing remark that might be encouraging to our attendees and to each other?
Sure. I'll start with identify your own values, the things that are most important to you in life, and work towards those. And many of those values are clarified in a faith walk. So just identify your values and have a compass that you can measure your decision against.
Thank you so much. Commissioner?
Yes, ma'am. There's one lady who has a question. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. But in my closing remark, I think that I would just remind everybody that your plan, what God has set out for you, He didn't have to share with everyone else, that everybody's not going to understand, that everybody's not going to support, and they might not be behind you, but if it was made for you, if that seed was planted inside of you, it's up to you to walk that thing on through and see what fruit it bears.
Thank you so much. And thank you for acknowledging the question from Ms. Steelman. What resources or groups are there locally to help women who want to run for an elected office?
I'd like to, may I offer those locally? Please. So the American Association for University Women sponsors a session called Ready to Run. And they also, in that very well respected course, one-day course, talk about the different skills and attributes for the different types of offices. So that is a very good course to take. The Committee of 100, which is a political, I think it's, Mary Scott, is it a PAC? Should we?
Yeah, but they're not partisan.
Right, and
It's
it's a leadership group. They sponsor
Yes.
a class called, well, similar to Ready to Run, but it is a class that's just $75, and it's a series of, I think it's 5 sessions, and it gives you nuts and bolts, including how much money you should expect to have to raise. They bring people in, different subject matter experts, and so that's available locally. On a national level, there's a group called Emily's List. I don't know if it's partisan, but I watched those sessions online. It's called Emily's List, not to be confused with Angie's List, which is a business reference group. So those are the 3 things that I know of, both online and then 2 that are
And Emerge Alabama. Emerge Alabama is a 3rd one.
And thank you. So that's a 4th level.
4th one.
Merge. And I think, Violet, tell us some more about that. Do you have to have a sponsor to send you to that?
That one, no, I didn't go through Emerge. I just jumped out there. I just jumped in the deep end. But with Emerge, I know that there is a fundraising that the first part is that you actually raise money to pay your fee, and that it carries out, I believe it's several months. You meet once a month and you go down, and they give you good information on how to start a campaign, plan a campaign, run your campaign, and just really grooms you to be a good candidate.
There you go.
And
Do you have the
Emma, let
League
me
of
say,
Women
Emma
Voters?
asked this question, and I want to say, Emma, that all those resources are good, and I would encourage you and anyone who on this call today who is interested in running to seek out those resources. But you can also call any of us. I mean, you can call any of us that have been in elected office, and then at the end of the day, just do it.
That's it. That's
Just
what I'm
do
talking
it.
about.
You
Don't
know,
That's it right there.
get in there.
Emily, do you want to have the last word?
I would just say seek the truth, educate yourself about the issues, and use your voice and your vote.
Well, I'd like to really appreciate our panel today. I've received several texts appreciating the discussion, the fact that it was conversational, it was sincere. I'd like to remind everyone to share your voice on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, because as we have heard in terms of the suffrage movement, it took decades for action to take place in favor of women and the vote. Our change to reverse the trends that have been impacting the voting rights of our citizens, that's why we need to restore the Voting Rights Act and strengthen the provisions in it to protect the freedom to vote for all Americans. Thank you again for joining our GPI. We will continue this conversation on March 23rd, same time, 1:00 p.m. We will have part 2 of Valiant Women of the Vote, and I believe that there'll be some resources that will inspire our audience. So ladies, again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your courage and your determination as you live being a valiant woman. Have a wonderful day.